Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do. One of these days, I'm going to remember this before I start this. Alright, it's not going to work. Sometimes it don't. Huh? Alright. Anyway, you're listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do, the podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And today we're going to start talking about the multi-generational family. Like I said, back in the pioneer days, you had the log cabin, and then when the kids got married, you added a room. When they had kids who got older, and, you might have a bunch of folks living in your place. So, that's not so much a thing anymore. But let's have a look at it. The late life family has special characteristics. And this is, folks who are over 60. Historically, even when and where the multi-generational family was prevalent, the years people spent in such a family were few. And the family rarely spanned more than 3 generations. And that's because people used to actually live less long. On one side of my family, I got to know my great-grandparents. So on one side of my family, we did have 4 generations alive at one time. And a lot of people nowadays do, because a lot of people start having families younger. Today, many families in developed countries include 4 or even 5 generations, with fewer members in each generation, making it possible for a person to be both a grandparent and a grandchild at the same time. And I have friends who are grandparents and, still have grandparents around. So, it's a thing. My grandparents were older, and we didn't get that to work out for us, and maybe to work out for my kids. I don't know. We'll see. The presence of so many family members can be enriching, but also can create special pressures. Yes, it can. I knew a family who were of Asian descent, and they had like 22 people living in one house. And that's what my friend told me. He said, that's the way we do it. He said, we all live together. He said, we all put our money in one pot, so to speak. And he said, if anybody needs anything, we buy it or whatever. He said, that's just the way it is. He said, so, we got the grandparents, the parents. He said, all the brothers and sisters, and a couple of the brothers and sisters had kids. And so they were all in one house together. And, in a way, that works out because you got grandkids who can take care of the, older folks. And, it's a way that some people make it work. Not everybody can make it work like that, but some people can. Increasing numbers of families are likely to have at least one member who has lived long enough to have several chronic illnesses, and whose care may be physically and emotionally draining. And me and my husband are kind of like that right now with his mom. We can't physically take care of her, and that's why she's in assisted living, and she has dementia. So, like I say, just even having a conversation with her is hard. Like I say, we saw her over the weekend, and she was getting things confused and having, my husband's uncle married to his own daughter, and they had a kid, and we kept telling her, no, that's not right. But, she gets frustrated when you tell her she's not right. But, it's a lot. It's a lot. And, when you're in that situation where, you're not physically able to take care of your elder, and, they're not in their right mind to the point where they're making it extra hard on you, that's a big source of stress. Let me tell you, that is a big source of stress. Now that the fastest growing group in the population is age 85 and over, many people in their late 60s or beyond, whose own health and energy may be faltering, And trust me, it will. Find themselves serving as caregivers. And like I say, again, that my husband was going over there. My two of my sons, one of my sons said no, he was not participating because she kicked him out of her house when he was 17 for a couple of reasons that I won't get into here, but they were not good reasons. But I mean, they were doing their best for her to keep her in her house. And they didn't have to do that. She certainly didn't deserve for that to be done, because she was not the best person in the world. So, we did the best we could for her. But when you're getting old yourself, and you're not physically able to do that, that becomes a source of stress, because you're like, I just can't do this anymore. I need help. Somebody help me. That's what my husband did. He had, like I say, an aunt that said, oh, let me know if you need help. And then when he called for help, her husband was like, you people are garbage. And then he had a brother who said, I'll take her, when you've had enough. And when he said, I've had enough, they're like, oh, well, that's just, oh, well. So he didn't get much help at all until it became obvious that she was having serious problems. And then everybody's like, well, yeah, we better do something about this. And, we're not trying to get in trouble ourselves, trying to keep her where she wants to be. Indeed, many women spend more of their lives caring for parents than for children. If you can imagine that. It takes 18 years to 21, 22, depending on, how your kid is when they leave home. But if your parent is, only say like 20 years older than you or whatever, and by the time you're 60 and they're 80, and they live to be 85, 90, 95 or more, you can spend more of your life caring for them than you do for your own kids. So, it doesn't even out, honestly. The older folks, most of them do their best. Most of them want to be independent and take care of themselves and don't want you involved in every little aspect of their lives. They don't want you micromanaging their lives. But there are some who enjoy the attention. In those cases, you kind of have to set some boundaries. Otherwise, if you have a person in your life that's a black hole and just keeps sucking the world in, you're going to end up wearing yourself out and hurting yourself trying to take care of them. So that's a no-win situation. The ways families deal with these issues often have cultural roots. Like I say, different cultures are doing things differently, and not all cultures are the same or do things the same way. The nuclear family and the desire of older adults to live apart from their children whenever possible reflect American values of individualism, autonomy, and self-reliance. Because that's, what we're taught. That's how we're supposed to grow up and be. That's the way it is here. Hispanic and Asian American cultures traditionally emphasize lineal or intergenerational obligations, with power and authority lodged in the older generation. That's like I said about the one, Asian family. The grandparents were, in charge of the household, and whatever they said went. That may or may not be a good thing depending on the situation. However, this pattern is being modified through assimilation into the dominant U.S. culture. And remember, we were talking about immigrants a while back. That's, a thing. When you come to a new country, most people do assimilate and want to be a part of the bigger country. They'll keep their own traditions and things, but they want to be like their neighbors. They want to be a part of their new country. African Americans and Irish Americans, whose cultures have been heavily impacted by poverty, stress collateral, egalitarian relationships. And now African American and Irish are also pegged as being the most abusive cultures. I've read a book where they talk about that's where the African Americans got a lot of their abusive ideas was from the Irish slave owners. So these two cultures have had kind of a rough time coming up. There's a lot of hard feelings for people who came down during the Confederacy and, stole houses and robbed people and did horrible things to people that they shouldn't have done. There's still that here in America, and we're seeing that now here in America. There's still a pretty big division between the folks who were, Northerners whose family and Easterners who might have been with the Union, and the folks whose families were of the South and might have been with the Confederacy. There's still that going on today. I'm tired of it. A lot of people are tired of it. I say give them Texas, let them have it, or Georgia too, Alabama if they want it. Let them have it and let the rest of the country go back to just being normal. We're tired of this, Let's just be normal again. Household structures may be highly flexible, often taking in siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, or friends who need a place to stay. I'm hoping to have a bigger house one day than this 2-bedroom jobby. Maybe that's going to be a thing that might have to be thought about. I don't know, but we'll see. These varied cultural patterns affect family relationships and responsibilities towards the older generations. Because, like I say, if the older generation is living in the house, then everybody's involved in that care. But here in America, that's not usually the thing. Consensual relationships. Unlike other family relationships, marriage, at least in contemporary Western cultures, is generally formed by mutual consent. And that's, like I say, here in the West, there are places in the East where there are still arranged marriages happening. And some people like it. Some people say they would prefer to have an arranged marriage than have to worry about finding their own partner. So, like I say, every culture is different and everybody's different. Thus, in its effect on well-being, it has characteristics of both friendship and kinship ties. Because my husband's my best friend. We started out that way, and we've ended up that way. We've come full circle now. Took us a while, but we got there. It can provide both the highest emotional highs and the lowest lows a person can ever experience. And I can tell you that's true. Because when you're happy, you're really happy, and when you're not so happy, you can be really not so happy. So, it's a roller coaster ride sometimes. What happens to marital satisfaction in late life? Because, some folks stay married that long. Long-term marriage. The long-term marriage is a relatively new phenomenon. Most marriages, like most couples, used to have a shorter lifespan. So that's just common sense there. If you're only living to be 40, you're probably only going to be married 20 years or whatever. Today, about one marriage in 5, like Jimmy and Rosalind Carter's, lasts 50 or more years. So 1 in 5, that's your odds there of getting to your 50th wedding anniversary. Because women usually marry older men and outlive them, and because men are more likely to remarry after divorce or widowhood, in most countries, many more men than women are married in late life. We read yesterday about men are more interested in being married itself, and women want a quality marriage. So, more men get remarried than women do. So that's their patterns there. Married couples who are still together in late adulthood are more likely than middle-aged couples to report their marriage as satisfying, and many say it has improved And that's true. The more time you spend together, the better it gets, because you stop fighting over every little stupid thing, and realize everything's not a 5 alarm fire, and you can get along. And you learn to have your life, and they have their life, and then you meet in the middle, and it's a better deal. Since divorce has been easier to obtain for some years, spouses who are still together late in life are likely to have worked out their differences and to have arrived at mutually satisfying accommodations. Like I said, we did couples counseling for you. We even tried this time because, it didn't work out so well the past couple times. But, we knew we loved each other. We just didn't know how to love each other, He wanted what he wanted. I wanted what I wanted. And, like I say, we didn't realize that didn't have to be a thing. That I could have my life, he could have his life, and then we could have our life. Yours, mine, and ours, all good together. And nobody had to be in charge. With the end of child rearing, children tend to become a source of shared pleasures and pride instead of a source of conflict. And now we have that, and I know a lot of people who have conflict over how you're going to raise the kids, because his family was much more lenient, more permissive, if you will, on child rearing. Basically, do whatever you want, who cares? And mine was very strict, so I wanted to be in the middle there. And we went to parenting classes at the community center, where I was getting health care from. And I said I want to know how to do it right. I don't want to be mean to my kids. I don't want to let my kids do anything they want and get hurt, or be a little wild child. I want to do it right. So we went and learned how to do it right. And we got 3 great sons. I think they are the best people that I know. They're not perfect. They're not perfect. They got some problems. But, everybody does. But as far as being, nice guys, good guys, decent people, they are definitely that. They would do anything for you if you just ask. So, I'm proud of them, and I like to think that maybe we had a little influence on them that was good. Me. My husband was like, oh, but, we are proud of them, and we don't have to fight over them anymore. They're grown men. Oldest one's 33, the youngest one's 25, so they're on their own. How couples resolve conflicts is a key to marital satisfaction throughout adulthood. And that's a big thing in marriage, conflict resolution. Before you even go get married, I recommend you go find out about that. Because, if you're just trying to one-up each other and be in charge, and one be meaner than the next, that's not going to work. You're going to have problems all the time. Patterns of conflict resolution tend to remain fairly constant throughout a marriage, but older couples' greater ability to regulate their emotions may make their conflict less severe, especially when you understand that everything is not a 5-alarm fire. And in couples counseling, they teach how to fight fair. There's stuff that's below the belt, and there's stuff that's reasonable, and to have conversations. And that's a big thing there. You can have a conversation and work it out without getting mad. You don't have to be screaming and yelling and cussing at people. You can just have the conversation. Well, you said this, which made me feel like this. Oh, okay, well, sorry the way I said it bothered you. I didn't mean it that way. Okay, and then you move on. But so many people don't know how to do that. And like I say, there's no one should be in charge in a relationship. There should be a balance of power, and you guys should be a couple and in it together. You're a team, Teamwork makes the dream work. Late life marriage can be severely tested by advancing age and physical ills. And my husband is had a stroke. He's got some brain damage. His is a little worse than what I got. I got the speech center problem, to where, I had to read a thesaurus to try and figure out words and things that mean things, so that when the word won't come, I can come up with other words that are similar. So, it's like, yeah, I'm a teacher, and things I need to be able to come up with words. Spouses who must care for disabled partners may feel isolated, angry, and frustrated, especially when they are in poor health themselves. And I've known some older folks where that was the case. They got on each other's nerves, and, kind of resented that they had to help take care. I knew a couple who, the guy was just like, I don't want to deal with this, I don't want to leave her, but I don't want to deal with this. So, such couples may be caught in a vicious cycle. The illness puts strains on the marriage, and these strains may aggravate the illness, stretching coping capacity to the breaking point, and putting the caregiver's life at heightened risk. And now there have been studies that show disabled people are twice as likely to be abused than people who are healthy, because, like I say, people can get aggravated with you, and lash out. Caregiving spouses who are optimistic and well-adjusted to begin with, and who stay in touch with friends, usually cope best. So again, that having an outlet other than the spouses and kids, someone to talk to, someone to hang out with, is a boon in your life. Divorce and remarriage. Divorce in late life is a rare. Couples who take this step usually do it much earlier. Only 8% of women and 7% of men aged 65 and over are divorced and not remarried. And I forget what our statistics on. We had some statistics a while back on that. But in folks between the age of 20 and 40, I believe the last statistics were 52% of those marriages in divorce. And I know psychologists have said that you shouldn't get married until you're 30, and then have kids from like 31 to 35 and stop. So, that's kind of how I've coached my kids, is wait till you're 30, wait till you're 30. But, my middle son has been married and divorced. He's in another relationship. So older folks who tough it out and hang in there, end up probably with a happy marriage, hopefully. But by the time they get to older adulthood, chances are they're just going to stay together and not end up with a divorce, because they've gotten used to each other, and whether it's good or bad, they're just dealing with it. However, since 1990, these numbers have increased significantly and probably will continue to increase as younger cohorts with larger proportions of divorced people reach late adulthood. And that just kind of goes without saying. Remarriage in late life may have a special character. Among 125 well-educated, fairly affluent men and women, those in late life remarriages seemed more trusting and accepting, and less in need of deep sharing of personal feelings. So older folks are more trusting and more sharing. And that might also have to do with how the last relationships worked out. Maybe they realize, well, I didn't trust them, I was checking their phone or whatever, or maybe, I was withholding or whatever, and, maybe I was too, emotional, and so they learn, like the song goes, to hold on loosely, and not let go. And then they have the exercise, in psychology, where you hold on to the coin like this, versus holding it on like this. You hold on to the coin like this, eventually your hand's going to tire, you're going to end up dropping it. But if you hold on like this, you can walk around like that pretty much forever, all day. So, it's like that. Men, but not women, tended to be more satisfied in late life remarriages than in midlife ones. So again, the guys are more happy just to get married again. Remarriage has social benefits. since older married people are less likely than those living alone to need help from the community because, they got each other. Remarriage could be encouraged by letting people keep pension and Social Security benefits derived from a previous marriage, because I think that's still the case where if you get remarried, you lose your previous husband's benefits, and by greater availability of shared living quarters, such as group housing. And like I say, the old folks are going to get together. Oh, yes, they are. So, if you put them in there, that's going to happen. Widowhood. Just as older men are more likely than women to be married, older women are much more likely than men to be widowed. And for similar reasons. Because, again, we live longer. Women tend to outlive their husbands and are less likely than men to marry again. Because I know I'm a widow and I thought this was terrible. She goes, I'm not getting married again. She goes, good God. She goes, I wouldn't have to put up with another man and all his crap. I'm happy the way I am. So I was like, okay. In most countries, more than half of older women are widows. In the United States, in 2000, 45% of women aged 65 and older were widowed, as compared with only 14% of men in that age group. And I noticed they're not saying widowers here, they're including men in widowhood here. So, however, as the gender gap in life expectancy narrows, as it has done since 1990, an increasing number of elderly men will outlive their wives. And the credit to that, they say, is the food. It used to be the women would feed the men the biggest portion, the fattest portion, and keep the smaller bit for themselves. But now men and women both are eating hamburgers and fries all the time. And so if you're eating like a man, the chances are you have more chance to die like a man. So, keep that in mind. Single life. In more than half of the world, 5% or less of elderly men and 10% or less of elderly women have never married. So that's a pretty small portion there. I know people who have never married, but it is only 5% of elderly men and 10% or less of elderly women. In Europe, this gender difference may reflect the toll on marriageable men taken by World War II, because they lost a lot more than we did over there, and so there were more women than men when the current elderly cohort were of marrying age. In some Latin American and Caribbean countries, proportions of never marrieds are higher, probably due to the prevalence of consensual unions. So it's not as, looked upon as something bad for folks to be living together. Now, there's a lot of religious folks in the Latin American community, but there are also a lot of folks who are not that way. So, In the United States, only 4% of men and women 65 years and older have never married. So that's in the U.S., only 4%. So, like I say, I know some folks who are like that, but that's the percentage. That's pretty small. Only 4% never get married. This percentage is likely to increase as today's middle-aged adults grow old, since larger populations of that cohort, especially African Americans, have remained single. Older, never married people are more likely than older divorced or widowed people to prefer single life and less likely to be lonely because they have never known the difference. Never married, childless women in one study rated 3 kinds of rules or relationships as important. Bonds with blood relatives, such as siblings and aunts and uncles, parent surrogate ties with younger people, and same generation, same sex friendships. And excuse me, most older women that I've known, I've only known a few, but most older women who never got married, that they have a bevy of women that they hang out with and go to lunches with and go to events with. So I've witnessed that myself. Previous previously married older men are much more likely to date than older women, probably because of the greater availability of women in this age group. And then, like we said, men prefer to be married. Men who have been married, they like to be married. Like I told you about one of my older relatives who said men are big babies. They never grow up. They just get bigger. And, I know that men do like to be taken care of a little bit. They get spoiled pretty quick. So, that might be a factor in that. More elderly daters are sexually active, but do not expect to marry. So, like I said, yes, old folks are getting together. Trust me, they are. I used to work in a nursing home, and I walked in on some stuff. So, yeah, that's happening. But, some people, when they get old, they don't want to get married. They have their own lives. The other person might have their own life. And, they just think that's an unnecessary step in the relationship is to get married. Among both whites and African Americans, men are more interested in romantic involvement than women, who may fear getting locked into traditional gender roles. And that is still where I live. I know women who don't work, take care of the home, man pays all the bills and everything. And I've been in that situation myself because we couldn't afford daycare, and we decided, well, I'll do stuff from home. But that's the thing there is I wanted to do stuff from home. I feel like I need to be doing something. I need to be working in some kind of way, whether it be, teaching, creative, something. So, if you try to lock me into, I need to have your house cleaned from top to bottom by the time you get home from work because you're providing the money, we're going to have a problem. Because I'm like, no, my time is as valuable as your time. I want to do something where I can be contributing to the household as well. I want to be contributing to society. I want to try and earn some money on my own. My goal in life is not to wash your dirty drawers. This is not my goal in life. So, I do those things anyway. But that is not something that I am interested in. And there are people who... I knew a girl I went to high school with. We are not friends anymore. We got to be friends at one reunion, and by the next reunion, she had changed so much we were not friends anymore. But she was talking about her traditional values, and she said she didn't have to work outside of the home because she had the most important job of all, which was taking care of her husband and children. And as she was saying it, you could just see in the eyes that she had told herself that she wasn't really feeling that, because she actually used to be a, paralegal, and, she really had enjoyed her job. But, she kind of bought into some stuff. But, it's like, if that's what you really want to do, there's nothing wrong with that. More power to you. But I know a lot of women, like me, who, we don't want to sit and clean your house all day. We don't want to sit and watch soaps or whatever. My mom did some of that, and I used to watch them. My husband actually liked them more than me. I used to tape them for my husband. So, in some ways we have some role reversal. But, a lot of women don't want to deal with that. We don't want to be your little housewifey. We want to contribute to society as well. We have things to offer, and we want to do that. And if you try to put us in a cage or a box or whatever you want to call it, we're gonna rebel. We're gonna buck and kick and bust down the stall door, because we're not gonna have all that. But that like I said, I know some women who are like, yeah, no, I'm not getting married again. I'm not gonna deal with that. And that is wise, because they felt like they were oppressed in the marriage, and not allowed to be their authentic selves. And that's why I say, we're happy now, because I do my thing, he does his thing, and we meet in the middle. We both have responsibilities. We have things that we do, and then we do stuff together. So, we're so much happier now than we were when we were trying to, control each other and parent each other, and point out every little flaw, because nobody's perfect. Definitely we are not. So, So, that's what I'm going to leave you for today. I hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching or listening. Until next time, that's all for now.